Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're making pumpkin whiskey. All right, guys, as you can see what we have here, we've got a couple of different pumpkins. One's carving style, another is more of a baking. We have some brown sugar. We've got a couple of different types of rum over there. A couple of clear rums at about 160 proof, which is 80%, and a couple that have been aged on some oak. One French, one American, and both of those are at 60% or 120 proof. We have a bottle of apple pie shine that I made a year ago that we're going to be adding in there, a bottle of good maple syrup, and all of the spices we're going to use, which are nutmeg, candied ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and some allspice. Let me get set up, guys, and we'll start carving these pumpkins. All right, first things first, we've got to get these pumpkins broken down so that we can get them roasted. I'm going to cut the tops off of them. We're going to scoop out the innards, take the skin off, and then after that, we're going to dice them up. We'll put them in the oven, a little brown sugar and some maple syrup, and we'll get these things roasted. All right, I thought you guys might actually like to see how I'm doing this. To avoid having to go through and scoop this whole thing out, so on and so forth, I'm just going to take off chunks of what I actually need. So what I've done is gone through, cut down the side, and then after that, cut a piece off like so. After that, what I do is come through here in the center and just shave that pulpy side off of there. And that way there's no scraping with the spoon. I started to do it that way and just realized what a pain in the butt it was. So now we've got the inside clean. Now all we have to do is get the skin off. Now doing it with the peeler was a real pain in the butt. I did the smaller one that way and it was effective, especially since the walls of this smaller pumpkin are so thin. But for this larger one, as thick as that is, it's a real pain in the butt. It's like leather. So I figured it'd be easier to slice it off. So that being said, just go around it like so. And there's so much of this pumpkin here that we're not going to miss out on a whole lot by taking the skin off that way. So now there's no skin on the outside, none of the pulp on the inside. And we can go through and move that bad boy up just like so to about, I don't know, 1 inch cubes or so. And then after that, we'll be able to throw in our baking dishes, get it all roasted up, and then move on. So give me a few minutes, I'll finish breaking this down. I might take a weight and see how many pounds of pumpkin I actually end up using between the smaller and the large. But nonetheless, I just wanted you guys to see how I was breaking this down, maybe save you guys some trouble, especially using this damn thing. All right, back in a few. All right, guys, we're back again. I ended up taking weight on all of the pumpkin. We ended up with about almost 4.5 pounds. Not quite 4.5 pounds. I think it was 4.3 pounds, something along those lines. So now we're at the point where we can go ahead and sprinkle on some brown sugar, a little maple syrup, and get her in the oven. Now I just started up the oven. It's starting to preheat now. We've got it set up to 350 degrees, nothing too crazy. Like I said, we'll keep her in there for about 30 minutes to an hour. It just really depends on what everything looks like once we've got it all finished. As long as the larger pieces are good and tender, I think we'll be fine. Now I'm putting brown sugar on just because it's got a good, deep, rich flavor to it. And I think the company's pumpkin pretty well. Now for the final simple syrup that we put on everything, I'll end up using a mixture of probably light brown sugar, some maple syrup, maybe a little bit of white sugar depending on how everything tastes. But super simple process, guys. Nothing too crazy. I love maple syrup. I use egg whites and bread to make a kind of a pancake mix every single day. And in doing so, I end up using a ton of sugar-free syrup every day. So I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but I've talked about going to the gym a few times. Speaking of which, it's about 2:30 now. I'm going to end up going to the gym here in about an hour, hour and a half. So I'll probably film this coming out of the oven. And then after that, get suited up so I can hit the gym. Yesterday was abs and cardio. Today we're going to do back and biceps. But all right, super simple, nothing too complex about that. Set this down right here. Good, and let's pop into the oven. Right, 1 and 2. just so you can see, we got them right there. I guess that's about the middle of the oven rack. She's only at 147 degrees now. I'm shutting the door, terribly sorry. So like I said, we're gonna get that up to 350 degrees. We're gonna let it roast, and then after that, I'll be back in an hour. All right, here we are back again. I figured while the pumpkin was in the oven, we could be mixing everything else together that we need. This will work, that is. Jesus. I think I've never taken a cork out before. Ah, there we go. They had an awesome rabbit ears. I guess that's what you call them. But the damn thing blew apart about a week ago. All right, what I've got right here is a little bit of apple pie that I made last year out of some corn whiskey. I'm going to give it a taste, but to me it just seemed like it would go really well. Now with this batch that I made, I used a little bit of apple pie in it as well. So I know that it will work with the pumpkin. Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, I'm going to use about half of this bottle. I'm not going to use the whole thing. So we're going to throw in some of the apple pie there. I guess if you don't have apple pie, a little bit of apple cider will probably work, something along those lines. But it really brings up the flavor of the pumpkin, believe it or not. Good. Now, with these jars here, what I have is rum that I made my very first still 3 years ago. Now these two jars are both French and American oak. They've been aging in these jars, I guess aging, with oak cubes in there for the last 3 years. You can see how much darker the American is. But these are in at 60%. And the two jars of white whiskey behind me are also rum, but they are 80%, so 160 proof. There we go. I don't want to get any of that oak in there. God, it's delicious. So all tax, toll, and drive away with the apple pie. These two jars at about 180 proof, and those at about 120. Well, not 180. Try not to make too much of that. 160. After doing a little bit of math, this will all be about 65% or 130 proof. But we're going to be adding water to it. Now, whenever I mix up the simple syrup to sweeten this up with, I'm actually going to use some of the pumpkin out of the jar that we'll be macerating. And I'll be cooking that in a pot with some water. That'll extract some of the alcohol that the pumpkin absorbed. It'll pull out some more of that pumpkin flavor. And then I will back sweeten with the liquid that I use there. So that will bring up to a total volume, and I want to keep this around 45% or so. So, you know, most of your sipping whiskeys are going to be about 40 to 45% anyway. So it's going to be easy to get a little tipsy on this. It's very easy to drink this stuff. So I would adjust the proof to your own palate and your own tastes. All right, next thing, we need to get some spices in here. Now, what I have here is whole sticks of cinnamon. We've got whole cloves, some crystallized ginger, and some nutmeg, and allspice. So the first thing you want to do is take about, I don't know, a dozen or so allspice. Yeah, that's about right. And I'm just going to crack them up a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I'm not trying to turn these into powder. I just want to make sure that the spirit can access the inside of all these berries and spices. Let me get a filter. And in order to keep from having to strain all of this stuff out, I'm actually going to put it all inside of a coffee filter. And that way, it serves two purposes. One is it keeps everything contained, so I don't have to worry about filtering out a bunch of dust particles and grit, so on and so forth. But also, as this macerates for the next 2 to 5 days, if I start to feel like the spices are getting a little too strong, I can just pull this little spice bomb out of there and let it sit on the pumpkin until the pumpkin flavor comes up to where I want it. So it just makes it a whole lot easier this way. All right, so we did about a dozen of the allspice. Cloves, I'm going to do 4 of these, and I'm just going to put them directly in there. It's I don't know if you've ever had clove, but they are very, very strong. I'm going to use 1 cinnamon stick. Now, for this amount of alcohol, you would think that I would use 2, but the reason I'm only going to use 1 is this apple pie has actually had a cinnamon stick in it for the last year since I made it last Christmas. So I think it's probably going to have enough of the cinnamon flavor already. And for these, I'm just going to crack them up a little as well. Not making ground cinnamon, just chunks. That'll work. Good, good. Next we have nutmeg, and I'm going to use 2 whole nutmeg. Nutmeg has this almost citrus note to it. And for these, like I said, I'm not breaking them up into a powder, just small chunks, just to allow the whiskey to get into the center of it, and that'll do. Now, as far as the ginger, being that they're already fairly large pieces, they're not going to break up into smaller pieces, and I'm already going to have to filter this out due to the pumpkin. I'm just going to toss them in directly. 1, 2, 3, and let's do 4 big pieces of this crystallized ginger. All right, good. All right, over here I have a twist tie. I'm going to bunch all of this up together. Keep everything nice and tight. There we have it. It's our little spice bomb. So like I said, it's really simple. It's we can toss that in there directly, and all we have to do is just keep tasting it every day or so, and whenever we feel like the spices are strong enough, we can pull those out, or we may let it ride through the entire time. Just really depends when the balance between the pumpkin and the spices really starts to get where we want it. Well, that's enough for now. There's not much else to do. The pumpkin's been in there for about 20 minutes or so. We got about another 35, 40 minutes. Tell you what, I'm gonna get in there and give it a stir. All right, let's take a look at this pumpkin and see where we're at. Oh yeah, all the syrup is thinned out and liquefied. It's more of a basting at this point. But that will thicken up, and I'm sure some of the liquids from this pumpkin are cooked out. Okay, good. There we go. All right, well, we're going to keep on roasting. And we'll give it about another 30 minutes or so. We'll take another look. All right, guys, it's time to pull this stuff out. Take a look. Oh, yeah, that's what we did. Perfect. Good. And good. All right, all the liquid that was on the bottom is thinned out. It's gotten a bit thicker, more syrupy, so that's good. So now we just need to transfer this all over into our whiskey. Or I guess it's a pumpkin liqueur at this point, but regardless, we need to put it in the jar. So that's what we're going to do. Best way to do this is big spoon. There we go. I don't want to splash all this stuff around. I really don't want to smush up the pumpkin too much either. You know as well as I do, when you clean out a pumpkin, it's very stringy. And last thing I want is billions of strings in this stuff. Last time I made it, it was inevitable. And I'm still gonna have a terrible time straining this stuff. That's probably the worst part of this whole process. It's actually straining the pulp of the finished product. But I've got some ideas on that. It's, last time I used a very fine mesh permanent coffee filter. You know, the ones that are plastic with kind of a nylon bag type material. I don't know how many microns they are, but regardless. And then after that, I tried to use paper coffee filters, and it was just impossible. So this time I've got a fine mesh sieve, like it would screen, I don't know, flour. You know, if you're into baking, you would sift flour and sugar and baking powder and all of that stuff together. So I've got one of those, and all I use is a pre-filter. And after that, I'll probably move to that permanent coffee filter. I lost a piece, that'll be okay. I don't know if you guys have ever made this before. Jesse from Still, he's got a recipe for it, which is really where I got the idea from. But every time I make this, everybody raves about it. All right, now I've got all this syrupy goodness at the bottom there, and I'm not going to leave it. We are going to get that out of there. So let me toss that garbage disposal. So what I'm actually going to do is pull some of the whiskey off of there, swash it around. That will allow us to deglaze these pans and get every last bit of flavor out of there. Looks good. Because it's so popular, in my house at least, is the reason I'm making such a large batch, so that everybody can take some. You can put some in the full-size 750 milliliter bottles for myself. I also have some smaller 375s like I showed you before. These guys right here that I'll bottle some up for, and you know, let folks take home for the holidays, for Christmas, things along those lines. But as soon as it hits October, man, I start getting excited about all the pumpkin. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big fan of pumpkin. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin whiskey, pumpkin anything, pumpkin spice. Sometimes I just put pumpkin spice on my yogurt. Okay, well, there's nothing else to do, guys. That was it. I mean, all the prep's done. Now we just gotta let this bad boy macerate for the next couple of days. You know, I'll do a test on it every single day and taste it and see how everything's going. Like I said, I've got the spice bomb floating on top there. So if at any point it feels like it's getting too astringent or a little too spicy or a little too overpowering, I can pull that out and then sit it to the side in a Ziploc bag in the fridge. And then, you know, once the flavor of the pumpkin comes up, maybe I'll, you know, add it back in, or maybe I'll keep it out. We'll see. And so last time I made it, I think it was 2, maybe 3 days, and then after that, she was ready to bottle. You know, I'll check in with you guys in a couple of days, and hopefully it'll be time to, you know, go through the process of filtering this stuff, and, you know, my favorite part, which is drinking it. So, until next time, guys, I'll see you later. All right, guys, I'm trying to filter this stuff right now. It's been about 2 weeks since we put it all together. I got too busy last week to go through and transfer everything over, filter everything out, and proof it down. What I'm using to strain it with is this kind of a paint strainer thing that you use for, I guess, an air spray gun or something along those lines, but it is not working for me. I'm not going to let you sit here and watch me spoon this around trying to filter it all. So what I'm going to do is let you guys go right now. When you come back, I'll have filtered all of this stuff out, and we'll be cooking down the pumpkin with some water and sweetening it up so that we can proof everything down and finish up. So I'll be back with you in a few. All right, well, that was a pain in the neck. I had to completely forfeit the paint strainer thingy. I ended up using a Brew in a bag to filter all that out. In here I've got a bunch of spring water. I had a 2.5 gallon jug of some Deer Park. I've just brought it up to a decent temperature. And what I'm doing now is I'm just going to gently mash some of this pumpkin. I want to get as much of this alcohol and the flavor out as I can. And if you notice, I've still got my little spice bomb in there as well. And then to this I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. We may add some more if we need to sweeten it up a little bit more than it already is. No big deal. But that's a good jumping off point for us anyway. So super simple. Just macerate your pumpkin after roasting. Bunch of spices. And after that, cooking it down. We're going to use this liquid once it's cooled in order to dilute the alcohol and proof it down to around 40% or so. I just kind of eyeballed how much liquid I've got in here versus how much I've got in that decanter over there. So this is pretty much it. I'm just going to let this kind of steep for about a half an hour and see if we can get some of the alcohol and the flavor out of this. And after that, we're going to filter some more, and then I'm going to filter it again. I want as clear a product as I can possibly get. As long as there's no pulp, I guess it'll be okay. But you know, I just really want it to be pretty clear. I'll be back with you guys in just a minute. All right, well, that was a huge pain in the butt. What I had to do is take my brew in a bag and line this one and then pour it in, and rinse the bag out, then line this one and pour it in, and rinse it out. And now, I finally got to the point where I can take this reusable coffee filter and just toss it in there. And you can see we've got some very fine pulp that we were able to strain out of this. You see that stuff right there? I don't know if you can. But that very fine pulp is what I was trying to get out of there. And it worked. And if you don't, and you don't mind having a slightly cloudy spirit, who cares? Not a big deal. It's your stuff. Drink it however you want to drink it. It doesn't make any difference. But, like I said, I wanted it to be as clear as possible. It's still going to be slightly cloudy. It's obviously made with a natural product. But I just wanted you guys to see, you know, just kind of what it looks like. It's almost like a, you know, a wine. All right, it's I pretty much went 50% water to the amount of alcohol, so it's still got plenty of bite. It's probably about 40 to 45% alcohol. And, you know, you get a little touch of sweetness from the maple syrup, but for the most part, you know, it's delicious. It's still a little hot. I like to use these, use this to do old fashions out of. It's really good. A little cherry and orange peel, dash sugar and some orange bitters, and it's amazing. It's like Christmas in a glass. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to bottle it up. I'm going to put it in some small 375 milliliter bottles. I may give away a few for Christmas, but in all honesty, I'm probably going to keep most of it for myself. It's a real pain in the butt to make. It's very labor intensive, but if you don't mind spending a few hours doing it, it's completely worth it. I promise you, everybody that has tasted this stuff has thought it was absolutely amazing. In all honesty, for the last 2 weeks, I've been stealing sips of it to make old fashions out of, and of course, that was at full proof, so they were quite a bit fiery. But you know, it's end of a 2-week-long process, and it's absolutely delicious. And I recommend you guys do this for you and yours over the holidays. So, thanks for following along the journey, and you know, maybe this will be a seasonal treat for you and your family.